Okay, we are going to do some algebra. In order to do the kind of second half of geometry, we need to make sure we have some algebra here. In this regard, let's be able to do factoring. Factoring is another way to solve quadratic equations that we're going to have to end up doing by Unit 3 or Unit 4, which will be sometime around December or January. Now, with that in mind, in order to do factoring, we need to talk a little bit about polynomials to make sure you guys are kind of all on the same page. So some of this stuff might be new, some of it might be new-ish, some of it might just be shaking off the rust. But let's talk today about what polynomials are and go from there. Okay, what a polynomial is. A polynomial is an expression, so no equal sign. An expression consisting of variables and coefficients, numbers in front of the variable, that involves only addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, so from here, and I should say, and non-negative integer exponents, and I'll talk about that in the next part. Okay. So to name a polynomial, all right, we have first make sure we can all speak the same lingo. And to name a polynomial, first needs to be what we call written in standard form. So just like you have a first name and last name, usually you introduce yourself as, hey, Dave Dresch, or Benjamin Dresch, or Eloise Dresch. Same thing with polynomial, we need to make sure it's in the correct order. And when we say standard form looks like this. ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are just some numbers, positive or negative, but the polynomial has been written in decreasing order. X squared, x to the first, and then the c, there's an exponent there. This would be the same thing as x to the 0. And what do we remember with anything to the 0 power becomes? Anything to the 0 power becomes 1. And 1 times c, well, it's then just c itself. So if I say put it in standard form, that's what we want to do, and that's what we're going to do here in this lesson. Standard form needs to be written from the largest exponent to the smallest, and these exponents will never be negative. They'll always be whole numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, okay? But they'll never be negatives. Then to name a polynomial, we first look at its degree, and then we look at the number of terms. So what we have here then is two tables. The first is the common degrees. This is like the first name. And then we have a bunch of its common terms. This is like its last name. So to name a polynomial, first name, last name, common degrees, followed by common terms. So I'm going to go through and talk about what each of the degrees are, giving a few examples of it. And then I'll talk terms, and I'll bring it all together when we start naming things, okay? So I'm going to start with linear. Highest exponent is first. Quadratic is second. Let's do this. Let's do first, and let's do some examples. So these are just examples of linear polynomials. 2x plus 3. Highest exponent is 1. This is a linear. Negative 6x. 1/2 x. 2.5x minus 10. These are all examples of linear polynomials because the exponent is all x to the first is the highest. Quadratic, we've been seeing some of those. 3x to the second plus 4. Negative 6x squared plus 6x plus 6. Largest exponent is squared, that takes precedent, so this is a quadratic polynomial. And there's an infinite amount of examples of quadratic polynomials. Doesn't really matter. As long as it's an x squared, it's the largest exponent, the largest degree. Cubic. That's an example of a cubic polynomial. X to the third takes precedence, the largest exponent. It doesn't have to be that. It could be just something as small as this. Fourth degree. Fourth does have a special name. We call it quartic. But you could also just say fourth degree. So an example of a fourth degree is, something like this. Or something like that, whatever. Largest exponent is 4, that's a fourth degree. Fifth degree has a special one we call quintic. 7x to the fifth. You should have kind of the idea going, okay? Those are all examples of those degree polynomials. Coming back up to a constant, that is 0. So that is something like, hey, I got 6x to the 0. But do we ever say x to 0? No. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So 6 times 1 is then just 6. So constant is just a number. -7, 1/2, 3. These all have technically x to the 0 there. And anything x to the 0 becomes 1. Those are those 6th, 7th, and 8th grade rules of exponents on that. Common terms now. The last name. A monomial, we have one term. Now, I don't care about the exponents right now. We're going to bring this all together in a few minutes. But we just have one term there. So that would be like a 7x squared, or like a 10x to the third, or like a 5, or like a -6x, or like a -8x to the 9th. That's a 9th degree. But who cares? There's all just one term there. Binomials, 2 terms. Makes that 3x squared, 7x squared plus 5x, or 10x to the third plus 6x squared. Those are all example of binomials. Don't really care about the exponents at the moment. We'll bring the first and last name together. Trinomial, number of terms is 3, so like 6x squared plus 4x minus 2, 7x to the 7th plus 6x to the 5th plus 4. 3 terms there. That's why it's called a trinomial. 4 term probably has a special name, but we don't really care too much about it. It's got 4 terms. So usually we just say like a 4-term polynomial. Same thing with 5 terms. As long as there's 5 terms there. Okay, there are 5 distinct terms. That's called a 5-term polynomial. And on the next page, we're going to pull these all together and talk about the first name and last name. So these 2 tables, if you're not familiar with them already, get familiar with them, because we are about to talk about how we name polynomials, because the name will tell you a lot as we work throughout this year, and then specifically as you get into Algebra 2, and when we do some of this Algebra 1 review as well.